welcome back to the second and final segment of our show this morning. We are discussing the world of work. As you guys are aware, we have a crop of high school and sixth form students who are entering the job force, the workforce, and they need to be prepared in terms of getting their jobs. That being said, we have with us on set this morning Dr. Danalyn Myvette. She is the president of the Belize Center for Training and Development. Good morning.
Good morning.
We also have with us this morning Maynor Larrieu. He is the digital marketing strategist who has been on the set with us before.
Yes.
Good morning, folks.
Good morning.
Good morning. And ideally the topic is putting together your resume, but really what a resume is a marketing tool to get yourself hired. And so I want to start off by just talking primarily about what happens to the old format of resume making. Once upon a time, it was great to have like a 5-page resume with detailed information. Has that changed over the years? Let's start with you, Danalyn.
I would like to say that very long resumes really tire out employers, particularly because of the fact that today so many people are job hunting. I have myself in my former capacity as an employer in terms of HR. You put out one ad and you get hundreds, literally now you're getting hundreds, you're flooded. So making it very tight and particularly focused. Many times we are submitting for a particular job and people will give you 5 pages of areas that are not relevant to that. Hone in on exactly what are the skills you have relevant to that particular job you're putting in, what are your experience, and that's what you highlight and condense in order to say to the employer, I have what it is you need.
And now people even access your online information.
No, definitely. And one of the platforms available online now is LinkedIn, which I think more and more employers, I know recently in the past 2 months I was in a job interview process and I wasn't asked for a reference letter. I wasn't asked for an in-detail resume. You know, they kind of scoped me out. And at the end I asked them, I said, how did you arrive at me being the best candidate for this project?
How were you shortlisted?
I was shortlisted, and they said it was all about skill sets. You know, and I think LinkedIn has a very good area for that. And I think going back to what the traditional resume is or used to be, it's highlighting exactly that, your skill sets, and more about what you've achieved, what you've earned, what you've completed. And I think LinkedIn focuses on that, and the part that also focuses on highlighting your endorsements, because I think networking is very important, but having goodwill from a third party who's also a professional. And you know, from my own experience, I got my first LinkedIn recommendation from the VP of Google in Colombia back in 2012 thereabout. I didn't even realize it until a year after when I said, let me look at my LinkedIn, right? But that speaks volumes, you know, when somebody from up here gives you that sort of credibility and authority, you know, it's a lot more credible than, you know, somebody putting in a call for you, which happens often in Belize, right?
What we have in Belize, I think, are the two structures happening at the same time. You have the more progressive industries that are accessing your LinkedIn and kind of finding out what's happening there. And you still have some that want that cover letter with resume and police record. So it's almost being prepared for both areas at the same time. I want to ask for people who are putting together this information, what really makes you, your name, jump off a sheet of paper and say, I need to know more about this person? Because you don't get the benefit of the personal contact. What makes someone jump off the paper for you, Danalyn?
I think what employers look for today, and fortunately my firm was hired about 2 years ago, and we were to do a labor market study, and we went and speak and interact with 150 employers firm and asked them what they're looking for. What they are really looking for is the whole employee and no longer just confined to what's your technical skills. So what they're looking for is, what do you bring to the table that's beyond exactly what I'm asking for? Many times, especially new graduates, do not recognize the power of having a CV that is built around volunteerism. Did I participate and show leadership skills beyond the requirement of what my curriculum demanded? Am I involved in conferences? Am I involved in what's happening in my society? Because it says to the employer that you have initiative. So when they're looking for that extra oomph, which gives them an idea as to your attitude, who you are, because that is such a big thing now. And oftentimes, new graduates are not recognizing that employers now have very high on their radar examining what is the attitude and the soft skills, which in schools they call it life skills, but it's a very big thing now. What are you bringing as the person, and how will you perform and interact as a team player?
That's interesting that you would say that, because from my own humble observation, you find that more and more students are kind of reluctant to do anything that has to do with extracurricular stuff, volunteering with the Y, or the Lions Club, doing different stuff, or attending workshops that helps to build your skill set. Most people are focused primarily on their academic performance and achievement, but as you rightfully said, employers are looking more for a well-rounded individual who not only excels on paper, but has that initiative to be involved otherwise. What are you finding when you look at the group of young persons coming into the workforce these days? What are you finding? That there is more an emphasis on their academic achievement versus perhaps that well-roundedness or that holistic approach that we speak of?
Maynor, why do you look like you want to laugh?
Well, just hearing what you guys are talking about, it brings back memories to when I started job hunting. I was fresh out of sixth form, and I was flipping through all this newspaper. And I think a lot of high school students and a lot of sixth form students right now are probably doing that. And when you read the job description, it starts with 4 years experience.
And you have none because you're fresh out of sixth form.
And so you're out of luck, right? And so going back to what you guys are mentioning, having that experience in volunteerism, or even if you're in the Rotaract Club, or anything that will build your resume in some sort of way, it's very, very hard to do coming out of college or sixth form.
So the best, and it takes care of what people talk about. Oh, I can't get job experience because no one will hire me because the jobs require job experience. But you can gain that through volunteer work.
Definitely, because if a job description says we're looking for planning and organizational skills, there you go. If you volunteer, you build that skill. And so when we think of it as skills only in the context of I am being paid for it, without recognizing you can harness skills through other medium, then it's very short-sighted. So I do believe that we need to get that out in a very strong way to our young people, that you must build it, and you can build it without it being in a job setting.
No, that's my testimonial. I think every door that opened for me when I was young was based on volunteer work that I did in meeting people within the network that I wanted to work. And you could see, I think people get exposure to your work ethic, what you're capable of, before you even start working for them. So it's one avenue to look at. But you were saying, so the volunteer works helps to jump off. There's one area I want to touch on, which is how your online profile, your social media profile can implicate you or elevate you in your job hunting process. And I, internationally, I know there's some countries that they say it's illegal to check or to employ someone based on their social media presence. I don't know if that's the case here, and I don't know how you stop it either way.
No, that's a pretty darn hard question, Marlene, and I think it's finding the right balance, because at the end of the day, your social media should be your personal outlet.
Yes.
However, that's an extension of who you are and what you represent. So companies nowadays are finding it, do I want that person to be representing my company? Are they going to be wearing my t-shirt? They're going to be representing my brand? Are they acting in accordance to what? So going back to perhaps looking at that question on the other end of the spectrum, instead of saying, do I need to censor my social media to fit into a company? Companies are saying, do they fit my brand profile? You know, so if they don't fit, then they're most likely not going to be shortlisted.
You're not qualified.
You know, exactly. So companies are looking at that a lot closer to ensure that their policies and their ethics are in line with the person that they're looking to hire. And more, I think companies are hiring based on skill sets, aptitude, and attitude.
Yes.
Right? And I think going back to voluntarism, I think, you know, that's how a lot of companies find good employees, because they have that relationship that they've built. And, you know, I know Marlene has a good working ethics and good working attitude. I want her to be part of my organization.
In filling that out, for instance, I do training in corporate world. And oftentimes what is now on the table for them is, we want to hire for culture, my organizational culture, which automatically is saying, what are my beliefs and values as a company? And so it is easier to find someone who, and assimilate them, who comes already with that kind of outlook. If I'm a creative person and I require creativity in my workplace, then you already come to me with that. I don't have to stoke you and motivate you, because you come with that. So you find that these are the ways in which companies are modernizing how they approach what it is they're looking for. Additionally, in regards to the online matter, for instance, many people put in their profile, employed by, or I'm working here. So they are themselves saying where they are connected with their employer, putting it out there.
And which means what they share on their social media is also connected to that brand.
By extension.
Exactly, because people will say, you know, you work for so-and-so and behave like this, or this is what I will expect to meet when I walk into the...
I coach young people against it all the time, because here's the thing. Even if it's not an established protocol to search somebody's online profile, we're human beings. If I'm about to go into an interview, I may Google it, I may not Google it. I may go on your Facebook, I may not. But if I do, if what I see there, is it going to help you in your interview, or is it not? If I see you complaining about work and your boss and the whole world and the community and this one, I mean, if you're just constantly complaining, and I have to go into an interview and I have to think whether or not I want to include you in our workspace.
I want to complain now.
You are already putting yourself at a disadvantage.
Definitely. I mean, there is no fixed law in Belize, so I do know there are employers who are practicing that. Because overall, I mean, we all know we dress up for interviews, don't we? I mean, we put on our best behavior.
That's a facade, right?
Yes. So when we go and look at who you are in your essence, as how you're putting yourself out there on social media. That is the background way of where I get a deeper background look as to who you are. And it does factor in whether we like it or not.
At what point does that become somewhat either discriminatory or prejudicial? When you look at someone's online profile and then you make your decision based on that, and not necessarily based on the fact that this person does come highly qualified in that particular area of expertise.
I think there's a two-part to that, and going back to, you know, your social presence has now become sort of like your own personal reference. You know, you're no longer having to pick up the call and the phone and call your previous employer and say, hey, how is he doing, or how did he work? You know, you could actually look at his behavior and kind of, you know, at a semantic level analyze their behavior. But going back to what you mentioned, I think it's also very important that the fact that, you know, being unique, you know, if you're a creative, going back to our creative, you're going to be messy, but you're going to be very creative. Now, it depends on the job description and the role at your organization that you want to fill. If it's somebody very creative, then you need to get somebody who's probably very messy, who is not on schedule, you know, and that's
because these are persons who think outside of the box.
They very rarely go together, the well-aligned person and creativity.
And,
very rarely.
And recently I was asked, you know, I was the previous manager at BTB, and that question was asked of me. It said, Maynor, who do you think, or what's the profile of somebody that would best serve this organization? I said, well, it's kind of hard because you pretty much need somebody who has analytical thinking and also has a lot of creative thinking, and you know, you would seldom find somebody who can think with both sides of their brain. So again, organizations are a lot more keen into identifying their needs into the job description that they put. And so they know a lot better what type of person. They're even doing disc analysis to find out, do I need somebody who is a leader, somebody who's willing to take
be a team
others,
player.
you know, who do we need for that organization? So corporations are becoming a lot more keen into profiling the exact type of person that would best fit that role.
And there are some companies now that hire and kind of do the aptitude test to figure out where you'd best be fit. So it's not, I mean, skills are important, but it means they've found a character that they want in their workplace, and they're willing to enhance them in one specific area. So it goes back again to your sales pitch being who you are as a worker. In addition, more so than the degree you bring to the table or even the work experience.
You see, and let's understand that there are various levels that employers are looking for in terms of the skills that they require. Some of it you are required to come in already, especially when we are talking at the professional level. You know, when I'm looking for an attorney, that is a particular set of skills that you have to bring in. When I'm looking for an engineer, that's a particular set of skills. So once you have that in your qualification and you are valid in terms of how it is you can apply that skill, then after that I'm looking at the person. Now, when it comes to lower level jobs, the entry level jobs, this is where we find that they push up on the radar that life skills, soft skills, because then based on, for example, the research I did, 89% of the employers said, you know, we train for entry level, we train them. So we want to see who they are as a person, more than saying the skills
what they bring
is what we want, because we are training for that. So we want to know the person we're bringing in.
So they want to be trainable. Having that open mind to learn how to do things based on the company's way.
Exactly. No, and I think you're right. I mean, when I used to work at my previous employment, you know, those were actually one of 3 requirements I had, because in the digital world, there's so little certified trainings 5 years ago, that the 3 things I asked for was you needed to be passionate, open to learning, and hardworking. That was it. The rest you could train somebody to do, but those things kind of have to come with you. Otherwise, it becomes very, very difficult. And one of the things that in February, the CEO of LinkedIn was actually, they did a survey and he was on CBS. He mentioned that the top 3 things for employers going back to LinkedIn and what they sought after was their skill sets, their endorsements, and their authenticity, right? So I think those are 3 key things to remember.
I don't want to lose that opportunity, because LinkedIn, I think more people are using LinkedIn in Belize. I've seen where people are recruiting for jobs. They'll contact you personally and say, we have an opening. So clearly, even in this country, and beyond the borders, you have people from, you know, the United States, the Caribbean, who may see your profile and say, hey, Marlene, you know, we see this, would you be interested? So how can we better our online profile? People like me kind of just have it. I don't invest that much time and energy into it. But what you have always explained to us is it's almost a part of yourself. So that's how people view you in the online realm. What should we what should we do and not do when it comes to developing our online professional profile?
Perfect. Well, the first thing, like you mentioned, don't let it be a wallpaper, right? You have to be actively updating it, connecting. Exactly. You have to be dynamic, and you have to. LinkedIn actually offers the opportunity to look for. Like, I'll give you an example. I'm a digital marketing strategist, so I could Google digital marketing strategies, and more people like myself are going to be coming up. Like, I've gotten invited to a digital web summit in October. And the guy actually found me on LinkedIn, and he's like, hey, I'm looking for someone like you to talk about these topics. And we have a call. You know, so people are connecting that way. And again, going back to your endorsements, if you're an organization, you actually get a different LinkedIn profile where you can recruit different persons. And I'll give you an example for myself. I could actually go on my profile and say I'm actively looking, right? Or you could actually set different levels of your profile, and so then they will know you guys
you
are
can
open
actually
to,
turn your recruitment on, so people
you
can
could turn it
recruit
on
if
or
they
you
want.
could turn it off. You could say, I'm looking, I'm passively looking, so there's different levels of looking, right? And that would allow you other recruiters to find your profile. But I think the biggest one is endorsements. You know, even going back to high school and sixth form students, because getting started, it's the hardest thing. You know, you know very little. Your circles are very limited in terms of your networking.
So that's a challenge, though, getting the foot in the door, and the fact that you have employers who are looking for all of these criteria, so to speak, and then you come green, and you haven't been able to sort of build your network, as you said, because that's something that happens over time. But you need to have an entry point first, and then you can flourish into that person.
What we have to learn in Belize, especially with young people entering the market, is how important it is to stay engaged. That's the issue. Any social media site requires consistent nurturing and engagement, not the wallflower. You've got to be there. So if you get in groups, find groups that have common interest to what your career path is. Begin to engage in the conversation that's going there. And we don't have the excuse anymore to say, I don't have the experience, because you have a wealth of knowledge at your easy disposal. Begin to research and understand things around where your passion and your interest lies. And then you can get yourself engaged in a conversation. We are not having our young people recognize the importance of doing that, because LinkedIn particularly is looking for expertise. And the way you display your expertise is getting engaged in the conversation, not just listing your skills, but displaying your ability to think and engage. And that is a lot of what social media is. If you're not into constant iterative movement on social media, you will really have a dead presence, no matter which of the platform you use. And so for some who have an interest, you can do blogs, or you can write an article and post it. That's one way where you can say, be safe as you're entering. Write up something and post it, and then that will draw others in to begin to engage. But we don't have the luxury to say, I can't get in at this point. You got to find your entry point and get in there, and the easiest way is to do it through where you're passionate.
So what you're saying is, you can use, if I'm job hunting right now, and listen, I've heard the stories, it can be tough. You could be the top student, but your resume doesn't necessarily say that.
Reflect that.
Or it doesn't translate as much to the HR person. They're looking for specific skills. So you're frustrated and you're trying to figure out, what am I going to do to get this job? So you're saying a part of what can be done is enhancing even your online profile. So if I start to share things that I'm passionate about, or things that I do, or things that I'm good at, that may help me.
Definitely, because it starts giving you the expertise to learn more about the passion you like. And one of the key things mentioned is being part of a group. You know, there's so many different groups, like attorneys, there's engineer groups, there's digital strategists groups that I follow, at least 10 of them, and I actively participate in those conversations. So whenever someone's looking to hire someone, they're like, hey, is anybody interested in this? And you know, you could pretty much work online from home. You know, and that's kind of like the dream job nowadays.
I am so grateful that you brought that up, because I wanted to ask you that. You were working with an international company, recently recruited as well. And Maynor, people are we tend to think of only the jobs that are here. What's the real possibility of online professions at this point in time?
I think it's a growing industry. I think it's definitely worth the while. I think a lot of companies, specifically in the U.S., are looking to hire people abroad that have the right attitude and the skill sets and ethics to be able to work from home. It's not easy. Not everyone can do it. You know, you have to have, you know, really good work ethics to know, because nobody's clocking you. You know, these companies will tell you, look,
we're not used to that in Belize.
You have to have your own discipline.
Exactly.
And all of that.
And to that point, you know, all these global companies have specific KPIs that can measure your performance. They don't measure the time you work. Mind you, that might be a catch, right? But they definitely measure specific key performance indicators, and you have to meet them, you know. So if you put in the work, like my boss told me, it's going to show. If you don't, it's also going to show.
Danalyn, can we talk about that? I find this to be one of the shifting areas in the work landscape, and In Belize, I'm starting to see it. Like, I hear the stories, but not as much as I know from people who work other places. It's not about the hours you put in as much as getting the work done. I have someone I know who tries to get workers and gives them the flexibility of working within their own hours, setting their own schedule, but just get the work done. But we've been so conditioned that it's 8 to 5. And if you are physically present 8 to 5, then you did your job. How do you get young? It's laughable, right? In this day and age, it's just obsolete. But, you know, I wanted to talk about how do we get the young professionals who are starting to understand that jobs no longer in the future are going to be looking at 8 to 5, some places clearly with work hours, but it's about being able to execute the work.
Right. That execution has always been very high on the radar of employers. I mean, because it's all about output, you know, and your performance. Now, in the context of more flexibility and the dynamics of setting your own time frame and being able to fulfill what it is you're required to do, that is more a new era entering in Belize. We have our employers, many of them still have to catch up with that because many of them are still there where they want you to punch the clock and say 8 to 5 as opposed to how effective you are.
And some jobs require that, don't get me wrong.
The majority still do in Belize. We have those who are pushing the edge, the envelope, and is allowing the employee to own their space more. But that would be in particular unique industries, you know. When we look, for instance, at the matter, coming back to what Marlene is saying, and let's carve out a particular sector. Let's look at the BPOs. They're having a struggling time with putting on 24 hours cycle because people don't want what are the graveyard shifts because it's 8 to 5. And so it's beginning to make, as a culture, our entire market understand that work can happen 24 hours
of the day. 7 days a week.
7 days a week.
Holidays.
Correct. That very research I had spoke to you about earlier, it was so amazing because when the employers were asked what is one of the reasons you've had difficulty filling jobs, they said schedule. People don't want to work outside of the 8 to 5. They don't have a job, but they don't want to work outside of 8 to 5. So the whole mindset we have in Belize of where you clocking at 8 and you come off at 5 needs to change in the conversations we are having with our young people.
That's
it's
unique,
adaptability. That's what it is.
That's
because
unique.
Agreed, you know, if I'm going to be manning the shop from 8 to 5, clearly I have to be there at those hours. But if I'm stuck behind a computer strategizing, well, I'm doing graphics or I'm doing something especially creative, it's just, you know, 8 to 5 means nothing. It's just when the creative juices may flow from 5 a.m. or from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. and you'll get it done. But there's an adaptability that we need as well.
That's a very good keyword, Marlene, because not just the workforce has to adapt to some of these old traditional ways, because more and more millennials and exennials are not used to that, or they don't look at the job force as that. But also companies have to realize that the landscape is changing with the new employees. And a lot of companies, at least through Central America, the U.S., have adopted what's called a work flexible schedule. So it means you could actually work from home 2 days out of the week. And they do that, you know, in countries that there's a long commute. You are a lot more productive. You literally could just step off your bed and go to a special space and do your work. You know, I just got back from holidays. I was abroad for a couple of days, and my boss was like, the only caveat I have for allowing you to get a couple of days off is that I need you to be on this call on Friday morning. I said, done deal. It's just 30 minutes out of my time. And you know, I was okay with that. I did a 30 minutes online meeting, and that was it. I went off to enjoy the beach.
And people do that now, the online meetings, so you don't have to actually go to a meeting from different areas. It's the world is changing so much, and where it's interesting because find companies, and they're usually small companies, that are progressing locally with that, but then I still find quite a number who are just stuck to old-time habits that
very much so. I have a very interesting example. In my consultancy, I was speaking to an employer who was talking about the great need for them to expand their production line because demand is now outstripping the capacity of the existing plant. So I laughed and I said, really? And said, well, you know, we need to get financing. And I said, do you? Why not add on another shift? Do you need to expand your plant, or can you use more of your working hours in the day? Put on another shift, bring on another night management group, and that existing plant can give you another X number of hours of work than saying I'm limited and I must add on more plant than add more hours to the day. So that speaks to the psyche of what we were saying earlier, with employers having to also make that shift and adjust. We are still in Belize having challenge. I still try to push my clients from time to time, and I said, do I really have to drive to come to your place? Let's have a Skype online meeting. Let's do GoToMeeting. Let's use video. You know, I'm like pushing them, and it's like, come on, let's do that.
Their ways.
Because they're accustomed to walking in and doing this.
But see, this is where, and I know that we really veered off topic from resume, but because that's one of the things I'm trying to reconcile in my mind. You know, we have to be honest. This new crop, this tertiary level group, may have done online schooling. They may not have been having face-to-face interactions. They're used to setting their own schedules. They come with a different work, just way of work than what the employers have. So how does this cross-generational mix work? How can I make myself marketable for a traditional workplace, especially understanding that perhaps my way of thinking and my way of working is very different?
Well, you know, earlier you asked the question, how do I make myself outstanding? Then that's one of the ways in which you can do that in your CV. Build in your CV whatever skills you have technology-wise, because many of those who are not yet there as employers really have a whole set of fear about getting there. And if you have that on your skill set, and you can say, I can bring that to the table for you, I can train, I can move it, I can lead it. It's one way to distinguish yourself in the pool that you are technologically savvy in those areas and can show the benefit of that when you're in your recruiting process. Because if you sit in an interview and an interviewer asks you, so why should I hire you? You can use that as one of the skill set that perhaps may not have been scripted in what was put out, but you could say, look at what I can bring for you. This is the exposure I have had, and this is how I can make that work for you.
And I think in addition to that, you know, just understanding that a lot of companies in today's age in Belize are still going through that digital transformation. So that may happen, but you also have to do some research in terms of the company. I was recently at an establishment where the owner of the establishment absolutely hates red. And so you would not find anything red in the entire property. And to me it didn't make sense, but going back to if I was job hunting and my resume had anything red, I would probably be thrown in the trash. So I think going back to what was mentioned, I think it's also ideal that, you know, you learn a little of the organization before you pitch. Like going back to when I was job hunting, you know, I remember a friend of mine, both went to apply to different, for the same position at 3 different establishments. He got the job, he got fired, he got rehired, and I was still unemployed. So perhaps I didn't do my homework, perhaps I was too techie savvy, even though I was just fresh out of 6th form, and that might also scare some employers, because they may not be, even though they might want to welcome it, they might not welcome having someone younger telling them what to do or how to do it.
Or they may be fighting the digital transformation as well,
so
which
again,
we're still in that
doing
era.
your little you know, homework, who's going to be my direct boss, who are they like, you know, and if you could find them on LinkedIn to see if you could gauge, or just ask around.
Do I send them a Facebook message and say, do you have any job openings? I want to apply, because I can tell you how much we get in and it's just can I come work here? No resume, no introduction, no anything. So it really is
a cold call, a little bit more aggressive. No, and I see the same. I mean, we manage 27 different Facebook pages, and we get that very same question often. And I don't think it's the right avenue unless there's a call to action for it, then you apply. But even when there's a call to action and there's a link to follow on a resume or a form to fill out, people are still not reaching the right avenue. So again, going back to following instructions and learning what to do will get you in that upper 10% of resumes that will get shortlisted.
It is really also understanding the fact that although millennials are social creatures, to understand there is still limitations to what that socialness means when you're looking to be employed.
There is some etiquette involved.
Yes, clearly. So you don't go about cold and pushing like that. What, however, still exists in our Belize context is what has been there a long time and is called the hidden job market. And what the hidden job market really is what we call networking. And it is in the research, it's the number 2 ways in which employers still look to get persons into their organization through referral. Number one is still the traditional posted in newspapers. Number 2 is the hidden job market. They have a lot of belief that if Marlene recommends Danalyn, that Marlene would have had some exposure. So it ties, the loop comes right back again to if you do volunteerism and you get yourself exposed, more people are aware of who you are, that when Marlene says, I'm looking for, somebody will say, you know who you may want to connect with? So the hidden job market is a reality. And people love to say, that who you know make you get the job. Well,
but
let yourself be known
to them. That is true.
Let's digress here quickly, because
you love this point.
The hidden job market.
I've always told people, look, you need to be able to network. Because that is how you get involved. That through your interaction with other people is how you get to know what is available, who are the persons behind the opportunities that are being made available, and what have you. Oftentimes you find persons who may be skilled, they may be knowledgeable, but they're to themselves. They're sort of introverted in the way how they go about doing business. And we're living in an environment where the more people you know, the more you get around and be able to work the room, so to speak, the better your opportunities are in terms of being able to land a job of your choice or what have you. I find that a lot of times you find younger people who are able to do so in the social media realm, but they are scared to do so in quote-unquote real life. Like, you put them in a room where you have the movers and shakers and they keep in a corner by themselves because they don't know how to engage and have that interpersonal skills. Let's talk about that area of it, the interpersonal aspect.
You're very on point with that. I mean, social media has, as we have said earlier, its benefits and its drawbacks. One of the drawbacks is we fire off on social media anything at all. It's open gate. It's open field for whatever we want to say, how we want to say it, whether we do it in proper English or not. It's totally an open, unregulated field for the most part, a free-for-all. When we are now in a direct in-person setting, this is where your communication skills come to play, your listening skill come in as a dynamic, and so all of that interpersonal of how do you really have a one-on-one with someone comes into play. And that is where we find that our young people are struggling because they are now in technology and not in person. And so when I'm in person now and I have to display maybe my analytical skill, my critical thinking skill, my communication skills, it's like all the way down to almost zero because they have not been accustomed to that. And so we have a very strong need for more of the young people to develop those elements of themselves when they're going into the workplace, because that is a part of what makes you a strong team player.
Wow. So I'm thinking of so many things. The good part is we're dedicating this full week or several segments for this week looking at people who are entering the working world. Today is kind of the first start. How do you put yourself out there? That's through resumes, online marketing, online resumes. So LinkedIn, if you're not on LinkedIn, you can join and kind of get a professional profile out there as well. If I'm sending out my resume, you know, definitely focus on the skill sets. This is such a perfect time, whether it's online or on paper. Let's just talk some very quick do's and don'ts when it comes to putting yourself out there to get a job. Who wants to start?
Do's. Ensure that you write in proper English, because whether we like it or not, when we are reviewing in the recruiting process and we see poorly written resumes, we say next. So ensure that it's articulated well, that it has a structure, that it's not long-winded, and that you select those aspects of your skill sets, capabilities, and qualification relevant to the particular job that you're looking to be hired for. So make it very tight, make it very focused, and make it relevant, but if nothing else, remember that it's a part of you, you're sending in on paper, so it's your brand, so look at it and be sure that whatever is there is how you want to manifest yourself to that potential employer.
Perfect. And for me, just to add to that, I think going back to having a well-written, well-structured resume in a concise manner, it's a huge challenge. So one of the greatest tips you can do, even if it's on paper, you could actually print a QR code on it so that then you have additional space, right? So if you're a graphic designer and you want to attach some of your graphic work you've done, you know, your employer could quickly scan that code and see some of your work.
Oh, wow.
If you're
like an extended resume.
Exactly. If you're a writer and you've written a couple of short stories, you know, that's where you would put it, and anybody with a smartphone would be able to scan it and see that extension of you. If their eyes and they get the attention of your resume, they can delve a little deeper as to some of the things. And my second one would be, you know, don't try to avoid words like hardworking, passionate.
That's cliche.
Yes, all those cliche words, but try to focus on more like accomplished, earned, certified, things that you've accomplished and that will set you apart versus the things you want to accomplish, because that's in the future.
Paragraphs or bullet points on accomplishments?
I absolutely adore the bullet points.
I know, thank you.
It's punchy and
It's there because it makes you address the accomplished.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
precisely.
You know, so bullet points is really the way to go, and it makes it right there observable and quick to pick up.
Yep.
And I think what you said earlier is the experience I've heard from most HR people. It is 100 or more, sometimes hundreds, applications coming in all at once, especially for entry-level jobs. No one has time to read all those details, no matter how beautifully written it is. So what makes it stand out? Graphically, you can also make it stand out as well?
Definitely. Make sure it's aligned properly. Make sure your skill sets and perhaps on a column separately, easily, you know, visually appealing is the perfect resume, you know, because again, going through many of them, you don't have time, but if something's catchy, you know, if you put skill sets and leadership, you put 4 stars out of 5, and then you put a list of things where you actually led and accomplished, you know, that gives you the upper edge. And of course, having it look professionally, even though you're going to typewrite it or do it on the computer, don't use any fancy fonts. Use more business-oriented fonts. Readable. Yeah, so that
Comic Sans.
Many years ago,
unless you're applying for like a graphic designer, you know.
Or like preschool teacher.
Many years ago, I won't say that, I had the benefit of being in a session that I was told about this book, What Color is Your Parachute? And it was really, and it's still modernized up to now, and it was really a way of how do you prepare yourself to get hired, you know. And one of the things that I actually picked up and used, and I found it effective, was to use a particular type of paper. Everyone might just be using regular typing sheet. Just invest a little 5 cents more and get a different quality paper and get a little bit different tone. So instead of using white, you may want to use a little cream or a little light, very tiny subtle colors. Print on that. In a stock of white, you pull out that one little cream to say, who is this?
They went extra.
Yes. Just the quality, little subtle things makes that personality shine through.
You make me want to go job hunting.
Good luck.
Because the creativity. And I love the QR code too. I think all of these are just such great tips. I want to ask one final question, although the producer is telling us let's go, right? If you were hiring right now, and I am fresh out of, let's just say, sixth form, and I need a job, I want a full-time job, what in my resume would make you hire me if you know nothing about me? What would you see in my resume that would make me say, I want a second look at this person, bring them in for an interview?
If they have done any volunteering work, that for me always is a first go. I look to see what extra did you ever do besides what you were confined to during your school time, because my motto is usually hire for attitude, train for skills.
Agreed, and my opinion would be to look at their skill sets, even though they're going to be very inexperienced, like what was mentioned. I think you could train somebody as long as they have the right attitude, right?
All right, well, thank you so much. You were the perfect kickstart, to our week in being able to help people get ready for the world of work.
Perfect. Right? Thank you for having us.
We're going to go ahead and take that final break, and when we come back, we'll have our wrap-up, so stay tuned.